Welcome to today's Global Connections program. I'm Bill Miller. Today we're going to focus upon intelligence and counterintelligence and how important it is and how it impacts basically every country on earth. My guest today is an expert on this topic. Dr. Kevin Riehle, a lecturer in intelligence and international security at Brunel University, London, is an expert on counterintelligence. His most recent book is Security, Counterintelligence at its Core, Assessing and Preventing Foreign Espionage. Dr. Riehle, welcome to today's Global Connections program.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate you being with me today. Before we get started, let me just mention your website. It's kevinriehle.com. So if our viewers are interested, they can go to that and get more information. But let's just jump right into it. How do you define counterintelligence? What exactly is it?
There's one minor correction. It's actually Brunel University, not Brunei University.
Oh, it's
But
Brunel. Thank you.
Brunel, yep. But counterintelligence is often defined differently based upon whoever is speaking. There's a phrase in U.S. politics: where you stand depends on where you sit. And in counterintelligence, that's often the case, that those who sit in an investigative organization or an operational organization or a security organization define counterintelligence differently. I propose in my book that you mentioned, the Counterintelligence at its Core, a definition of counterintelligence that kind of embraces all of those. Those definitions are not wrong. The investigative definition and operational definitions, they're not incorrect, but I believe that there is some room for an overarching umbrella definition that encompasses all of them. And that's so that all of them can work together in a cooperative way, so they can all believe that they are working toward the same goal. One of the complications with different definitions is that people don't necessarily all work together. They believe that what they are doing is the most important thing, and that others are not doing the same thing as they are. So there's some parochial views of the definition of counterintelligence. But my definition looks at the broad the broad idea of how counterintelligence is trying to affect the adversary. Counterintelligence is a threat-based discipline, and so it occurs in a competitive environment where two sides are trying to develop operations and investigations against each other. So my definition basically looks at that competitive environment and says that counterintelligence is preventing an adversary from gaining decision advantage over us. And decision advantage means, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sure. No, I'd say that makes eminent sense. I think it's very good. Well, let's jump right into it here in the last 15 minutes that we have. You've in your book, you mentioned there are four types of counterintelligence analysis. Briefly, what are those four types?
Those four types are defined by what customer they serve and the level of formality of the information that is produced by them. One is a counterintelligence, an analyst's direct support to counterintelligence operations and investigations. So, looking for to help feed our counterintelligence activities. That's just one type, and that type, the customer is a counterintelligence or an operational customer, a person within the intelligence world who understands intelligence and can sometimes use a less formal intelligence product, a product that may be literally spoken from one person to another, sitting next to each other in the chair, or it's not necessarily as formal a finished product. That's one type. The next type I call foreign intelligence threat analysis. That means understanding what level of threat a foreign intelligence entity poses to our interests. in that type of analysis, an analyst uses what I call a threat equation, which is threat equals intent times capability times opportunity. And those three factors together then combine to lead to an assessment of how severe is the threat from the entity that the analyst is looking at. The third type is what is somewhat confusingly called counterintelligence. It is what our intelligence officers use to understand the threat from the counterintelligence of another country. Basically, what is another country trying to do to prevent us from succeeding in our intelligence activities? The customer for that one is an intelligence professional, is a collector, a person who understands the intelligence operations world as well. The fourth type, I call it strategic counterintelligence analysis, and that is looking at the broad picture of what a foreign intelligence service is trying to accomplish. What questions are they trying to answer, and how does that fit into the broader strategic interests of the adversary? How can we essentially reverse engineer their priorities by looking at what they're doing on the ground? The foreign intelligence threat analysis and the strategic CI analysis have a broader customer set. Sometimes the people they serve are not intelligence professionals. They are military commanders or senior officials in the government. And so there are people who are not as accustomed to intelligence. So they usually result in more finished analysis, more polished analysis that is written in such a way that a non-intelligence professional can understand it. So those are the four types, and generally what they're trying to accomplish.
I see. Now, it's axiomatic in the international field that all, well, not all, most, if not all, countries are, I'm going to say, spying on each other. They're gathering reconnaissance on, even Israel spies on the U.S. and vice versa. Of course, we know China and Russia definitely are spying on us, and we're spying on them. It's
Sure.
no great secret. But that is any type of information gathering would really be classified under counterintelligence, would it not?
Well, it could be. If information is protected in some way, if it provides advantage to another side, then yes, that would be part of the definition of preventing decision advantage. If information is publicly available, anyone can get it, anyone can collect it, then it doesn't necessarily provide advantage to either side. Both sides have the same access. So in that case of openly available information you can download from the internet or whatever, that sort of thing, the collection of the information may not be what provides the advantage. It's the analysis and the collation of the information and the ability of a foreign intelligence service to implement that information that is of counterintelligence interest. So what we call OSINT often, some people say, well, OSINT, the counterintelligence services should work against OSINT collection. Well, that's hard to do because OSINT collection just means it's available publicly anyway. And what are you going to do about it? In a democratic society, we have a lot of information that's available publicly, and that's not necessarily a counterintelligence concern. But understanding how a foreign intelligence service analyzes the information, what capabilities they have to make sense of it, and to then integrate it into other types of other sources of information, that is of interest to a counterintelligence analyst.
Certainly would be, yes. Well, we're going to come back in just a moment to talk about this. Well, you're watching Global Connections Television, which is a privately funded, independently produced program. The opinions expressed on Global Connections are solely those of the moderator and his guests. We'd invite our viewers to go to our website at www.globalconnectionstelevision.com to view previous programs. Also, if you're involved with a PBS or community access television station, or perhaps an educational institution that has an intra-campus television hookup, or you have a podcast, or you just have a computer, you like our shows and you would like to share them, please feel free to do so. Global Connections Television is provided at no cost as a public service to help us better understand international issues and how they impact our lives. Today, we're taking a look at a very important international issue, and that is counterintelligence. My guest is an expert on this topic. Dr. Kevin Riehle, a lecturer in intelligence and international security at Brunel University, London, is an expert on counterintelligence. His most recent book is Security, Counterintelligence at its Core, Assessing and Preventing Foreign Espionage. This, as we talked about, Doctor, this is so pervasive. It's probably since the beginning of any two or three humans together, they've probably been gathering information on one another. Let's talk about specifically about some of the specific countries. What is the situation now with how did the Russians use counterintelligence in their invasion of Ukraine, and how pervasive is it? We know there's evidence now that the Russians interfered in our 2016 elections through Russian bots, and probably again in 2020 or 2024. I mean, so what approach do the Russians take on this?
The Russian intelligence services are highly capable and they have the ear of the president. The president needs information in Russia, just like any president does. And what we see Russian intelligence services doing is answering what are the highest priority questions for the president of Russia and for the senior decision makers. That includes what's happening in the war in Ukraine. How does Russia, at the tactical level, succeed in its military operations there? And that's a major intelligence question for Russia today, because that is dominating Russia's foreign affairs right now. But at a broader sense, Russian intelligence services collect information that will strengthen Russia in the political environment in the world. There's a difference between collecting intelligence and acting on it in a covert way. Russian intelligence services do both. So the collection of intelligence happens across the spectrum of intelligence disciplines. Large amount of human intelligence, which can be conducted from embassies or from non-official travelers, or from what are called illegals, which are people sent abroad under false identities with no connection back to Russia, again, usually. So Russia has all of those tools available to it at the human intelligence level, but Russia also has signals intelligence satellites and imagery intelligence satellites. It has mapping satellites. It has intelligence collection aircraft. And they collect a combination of signals and electronic intelligence, or collecting on foreign radars and foreign military systems. So Russia has that whole spectrum available to it. And because of that, Russia can answer many of the questions that the president and the military leaders are asking. They can get that information. One of the complications that Russia has right now is that not long after the war in Ukraine initially began, a large number of Russian officers were expelled from European countries. The countries around Europe in particular expelled dozens, in some cases, of diplomatically covered officers, many of them intelligence officers. And that left Russia with fewer platforms from which to collect intelligence in those particularly European countries. That includes both human intelligence and signals intelligence, which Russia operates from those embassies. That meant Russia had to shift some of its operations to places like Africa, where Russia has reopened a number of embassies that it had closed during the 1990s, at least partially, so that it has platforms from which to run intelligence operations. Russia has, as the invasion of Ukraine has also spurred an increase in counterintelligence sharing across international boundaries. So countries are sharing with each other. I saw this via this collection platform, country X. You might want to look into this. You might want to investigate this person. And that sharing makes Russia's intelligence operations more difficult. And intelligence operations thrive in the dark. And if that intelligence sharing across international boundaries sheds light on them, then that makes them makes the operational environment more difficult to work in. So Russia has both some advantages and some disadvantages as it tries to operate in the world today.
This brings up the leaders of the country, and there's been a tremendous amount of concern and a lot of evidence over the past few years about some of the leaders in the United States. One is about Tulsi Gabbard, the head of national intelligence in the United States, and how so often the information that she has, the Kremlin has it shortly, some of it, not all of it, allegedly has it right after that. We saw where President Trump, when he left the office back in 2021, he took boxes of super secret files with him, top secret files, and still there was no case tried on that, and we never got to the bottom why he wanted them. There's a lot of speculation, and obviously a lot of that speculation is probably correct. But how concerning is that to you as a specialist in this area? And is there any reason for concern with Tulsi Gabbard and President Trump?
Well, I try to stay away from U.S. domestic politics. It gets to be messy.
That's a wise thing to do.
Russia will take advantage of every opening that is given. If there is an individual who is expressing pro-Russian sympathies or who is simply being negligent in their handling of intelligence information, Russia will do everything it can to exploit that. Does that mean these people are Russian spies? Probably not. But Russia can leverage those relationships and can leverage those activities for its own interest. It can place people where they need to be. It can sometimes not even try to collect the information, but just use the information for influence purposes. Use those revelations that are happening, that are coming out in the open media for influence purposes. One thing Russia tries to do is to reduce the influence of the United States in the world. Russia has a philosophy that unity is strength and division is weakness. If Russia can show a United States that is divided, that is arguing with itself, that is chaotic in its politics, if it can accentuate that in an international forum, then that allows Russia to claim that the United States is weak. The exact opposite happens inside Russia, where Russia claims complete unity in Russia. Everyone, according to the Russian narrative, is 100% behind Putin. Everyone's 100% behind the war in Ukraine. And that unity that Russia tries to portray in its domestic environment is intended to show a strong Russia in that the unity equals strength sort of philosophy. So Russia tries to show itself as being unified, tries to show its adversaries as being divided, and by doing that, it can then say, look how strong we are, look how much more of a stabilizing entity we are in the world, look how destabilizing America is in the world. And those stories about various politically charged activities that are happening in the United States simply give Russia ammunition with which it can then claim that the United States is divided and weak. Now, in the United States, it is divided, but the US system is by its nature adversarial. And so what Russia doesn't really understand is when there are arguments in the US political system, those arguments aren't new, and they're not necessarily damaging to the US system. That is the nature of the US system, to have that open dialogue and those even arguments in the political dialogue, open in the open. And so when Russia sees that, it sees an opportunity. It says, we can accentuate that. We can make that look even more divisive than it is. When in the United States, people think, well, yeah, well, that's just how politics works. So I think Russia sometimes doesn't really understand the democratic reality. And so it uses that more autocratic philosophy in order to make itself look relatively strong in the world.
You certainly do, and effectively in some cases, without a doubt. Well, we're just about out of time, but let me ask you, this is a very complex topic. We didn't cover all from A to Z, I'm sure, but in the last minute and a half, 2 minutes we have, what points would you like to convey to our viewers around the world about the importance of counterintelligence, and how they need to be aware of this?
The counterintelligence means understanding and acting against foreign intelligence services. People need to realize that there are major foreign intelligence services that have significant capabilities that are acting in the world today. And those foreign intelligence services are acting for their own decision maker, for their own purposes. They don't necessarily want the best for the United States. And so when we look at other countries in the world and we think, are they an ally, or can we trust them? Some countries clearly do not earn the trust that we sometimes give them. There are those who see Russia not as a threat in the world, but Russia wants no good for the United States. I mean, it will say things that makes it sound like it wants to cooperate, but in reality, Russia has no interest in the United States being strong or influential in the world. So Russia will do whatever it can to reduce that U.S. influence in across both the open and the clandestine capabilities.
They certainly will, and we've seen this, especially, I think, with the so-called peace talks between Russia and the United States, between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump on Ukraine, and all that's happening is we're just postponing, pushing it down the road, kicking the can down the road. Nothing positive's come out of any of them up to this point that I can see, but we do definitely need to be aware of all of this. But Dr. Kevin Riehle, it's a very important topic. It's one that affects people all around the world, whether they know it or not. It's all 8.2 billion people. But I want to thank you so much for a very interesting and a very informative program.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. I'm Bill Miller. Thank you for joining us today on Global Connections.